Okay, so welcome to part 6 of my GPS assisted ionizing radiation survey meter build video. So if you're only now just joining us, let me give you a quick little intro. And if you want to know the full reason why I'm building this, have a look at the link in the description below. There's an unlisted video there that explains a bit more detail about what this project is about. So what do we have here? We have a little Raspberry Pi 0W built into a pop-up monitor, and we also have a Geiger counter built into it as well, and we have a real-time clock and a few other things. We're not getting much radiation through tonight. It's very, very low here. We have a Ukrainian SBM20 tube in the bottom, and there will be a grill over this. This is still a build in progress. If you've seen the other previous videos, you'll notice there are now some rubber feet on here. There's a slot through here because the laser cutting didn't work out quite right. There are a few more buttons on the top. And we have a 12 volt DC input crudely drawn until I can label it. The case is also all screwed together. So where are we picking up? So where you pick up this video is me receiving a few deliveries. And the final parts to get the Geiger counter board happening. So that bit is actually happening, and there's a bit of programming as well. These have turned into nearly half-hour videos, so I try and keep it going, but I've cut a lot of the build footage out. There's been a lot of just sitting around on my hands waiting for components to show up, but it's almost ready to go. So if you watch through to the end, you'll probably see it actually successfully logging GPS readings and radiation data all in the one CSV file. A few quirks to go, but we're nearly there. So let's just jump straight to the parts that arrived at the start of this week, and we'll go from there. So yeah, again, link in this description below if you want to know the deeper details about this project. So the postie's been again. More Geiger counter bits. This time, some 4.7 mega ohm resistors. And these, if they're right, will be the 1N4937s. These are the high-speed switching diodes. After this, I'm pretty sure all I'm going to need is some of those special high-voltage transistors. I think we'll be about good. But let's get a couple of these in the board first. Alright, so I've got my like $2 worth of 4.7 mega ohm resistors laid out here. I want to just label the strip a little bit, just because reading the color codes is for chumps. As you probably noticed, I do some of the common values I know off the top of my head. And I've got some neighbours that are trying to be heroes in the background there, pulling burning rubber, if you can hear that. Now these were, I'm going to leave these in the bag, 1N4937s. Okay, so I had a look at the board here. Where are we at? We've got R2 to put in, D1 to put in, Q3 and Q2. After that, I'm pretty sure it's just the beeper and the tube, of course, which I've already got. And once all that's in, I'll put the pulse pin header in here as well, so we can get some pulses out. But I'm going to try and make that drive an optocoupler, just because call me paranoid. But yeah, we're almost there. So let's get these components shoved in the board and solder them in. Okay, some more deliveries have arrived. These weren't what I was hoping they would be. I have chip sockets shoved in a piece of foam in a padded bag again. Pretty sure the pins will be bent, but we'll find out. Anyway, not the transistors I was hoping for. Now I'm almost done, and I'm sitting here. It's been several days since I did that now, so I've been sitting here waiting for these last two components, Q2 and Q3, which are 2N3904 transistors. I thought I'd ordered them, but when I checked my AliExpress cart, alas, I had not. So it's RS Australia to the rescue, and I found them for 11 cents each. I had to buy 50 of them, but that still works out to about $6 by the time I have to pay all the shipping and everything. But RS will have them to me in a couple of days, so I don't have to wait another 3 weeks for stuff from China. Piezo beepers, I don't know where they are. They might be here. I've got a battery pack. The switch I'm using externally. I've got the tubes. The button's in. Next couple of days we should be able to see this fired up. And I know I've got one good known working tube. The other one I'm pretty sure is going to work. But I'll test that once this bit's working. Oh, so close. So very, very close. Alright. So, the postie's been, but he didn't bring a delivery from RS. He brought a delivery from Vietnam. It looks like it was packed in China. But, nonetheless, there's about 50 or so 2M3904 transistors. That means we've got the last pieces we need to assemble this kit. And hopefully it works. Well, actually, I need some beepers, but I can substitute them anyway. Yeah, so, let's get cracking. Alright, so it's quite noisy in here at the moment because I've got lots of extraction fans happening. I have a new extraction fan to install too that was just donated, this big 120mm one here. But, yep, I'm sorry about the background noise. You're going to have to deal with it for a moment. We're having an extreme weather event at the moment. I'm pretty sure my fences are going to blow over before the day's out. So, anyway, let's get these transistors in, hopefully in their correct orientation. Now, I'm fairly adept at wriggling these in, or I used to be, until I got MS. But that looks pretty good. I'm going to keep them a little bit off the bottom so the heat doesn't affect them too much. Alright, we'll get both of these in position. Final parts, except for the beepers, but I've got the LED in, so I'll be able to see if it detects anything from there. Alright, I do believe that's most of the components on the board, so let's get the soldering iron out and put these in. So the final little bits of soldering here, let's hope the iron's hot enough. It is. I'm going to add even more noise here. I'm going to run more extraction. Now this is usually the sound of my workshop when I'm not filming. I normally turn everything off for the purposes of filming. I just got that transistor out of whack so it'll look uneven. At this point I've got some spare boards to screw up and I'm a little excited, and of course I've still got shakes which I suspect are related to MS. I've got to have another visit with a neurologist, which, being rural area that I am, that's not going to happen for another 6 months or so. I have to live with it until then. Alright, let's get the flush cutters out. I notice there's a hole I haven't populated there, but I think that is simply for the third pin of the 8 MHz crystal that's in there. Wow, this wind is really going, and just slammed the, you can see this tube here hopping every now and then. That's the wind slamming the one-way flap back against the window. Alright, so I'm going to put a battery pack on this and see what we can get. I'm getting excited now. Okay, so I have a battery pack attached. Now, before I apply any power to this, it's time to just double check everything. And I think I've had the most trouble I've ever had putting a chip in on this project. If you've seen the other parts, you'll notice that I put some holes in my pointer finger, which I've waited now so long for parts that's completely healed up. But yeah, I did actually have the legs of this chip jammed straight through my finger. I'm having to come to terms with the fact that MS is limiting my dexterity a little bit, and I'm not quite as good at putting chips in as I used to be. So yeah, there's that. As a consequence, I want to double check everything is in a good position, and I want to be wary of some of these components that have steel legs. If you bend them too much, they fall off. So I programmed this up to use the external chip, so external counter, so I hope that's correct. That's not going to matter too much because I'm going to be using direct pulse output and using a Raspberry Pi, and it's got a crystal built in on the board. So that will time correctly regardless of what this does. I'm not using the serial output to determine the counts. So let's go over our components one by one and just double check. So we know resistors are not polarized. They're just a bit of carbon, or in these cases they're metal film ones. We have a diode there which we want to double check. is correct according to the silk screen. Yes, the black lines on the right end. This diode here is correct according to the silk screen. Inductors are not polarized, capacitors are. So that stripe indicates negative, and we have our positive mark there. That's good on our electro. Our crystals are not polarized. We have our mute button there, that's fine. And we've got non-polarized capacitors that are in here. I've used polyesters because initially I couldn't get the ceramics, and then like 2 weeks later all the ceramics showed up. So the next couple that I build, I'm building 2 at a time. The next 2 out of the 5 that I've got, I'm probably going to put all ceramics on. Alright, cool. So yeah, looks all good. So alright, it's time to test it. Now comes the bit for not having shaky hands. So now I need to make sure I've got this the right way. This is the tube, and my hands are extra shaky at the moment, partly because I'm nervous, but mostly because of this damned MS. So let's get our positive the right way. Now these are not very tightly. I've stretched these out so I don't crush the tube. That should drop in gently. Okay, now I don't have the loan of the 1 gig ohm. I don't have a loan of the 1 gig ohm meter that I plan to have for this. So I'm going to have to use the idiot-proof method, and that involves using a test source and dialing up the variable resistor until the voltage hits a threshold for the tube. So we're going to take a little bit of americium from a smoke alarm here that is now stuck and I can't get out with my hands. There we go. Alright, turn off distractions for a moment. So I have a couple of cheap batteries here. I'm going to install those. Now there's no beeper installed on this yet. So let's turn you on for a minute. I'm going to get some more blue tack. Oh, okay, so it is detecting some particles here, but not very much. I hope you can see that LED lighting. You can. Okay, so I think it's probably a little low, so I'm going to go and see if I can find a ceramic screwdriver. We'll be back in a moment. I put the other one together. I thought I'd just check with my actual calibrated counter here. I'm going to stick this down and try and put both the tubes in a similar position. And so actually I've had this bit of smoke alarm americium for close to 10 years now, so there's a chance that it may have decayed a little bit, and so it's not as hot as I remember it being. But looking at the blue light flashing and the count sort of roughly on the same as this from the same distance, I think actually it's probably pretty calibrated. It's about right. So you know what, if it's not working, if it's not broken, I'm not going to fix it. Okay, we have 2 working counters, one without a beeper, we can see here, and one up here with a beeper. We move along a bit. I want to see if the shut up button works, if I can do this without getting done with 400 volts. So apparently the shut up button doesn't work, but we'll figure that out later. But we have 2 working counters. That I am very happy about. Now we've got to do some modifications to the case. Okay, so these are what I got given. These are the leftovers of thoriated tungsten electrodes. And I'm just going to push this back here and make a random pile here. Let's turn the counter module on and let's park it over the top of them. Yep, we should be seeing some very bright blue flashes there. So yep, that's what we'd expect to see. So now let's shut this down, turn off our counter, and we'll turn off our display, and our battery volts should shoot up a little bit. When it's shut down, then we'll disconnect the power and pack everything up. Alright, So where I'm at now, I'm connecting to the header on here, which I think is J6 on the diagram, and I'm gearing up to attach an optocoupler, which means if I can run an LED off that, the input's about right for an optocoupler. I've picked a random resistor I had here, which I think is about 100 ohm or something, and this is a 100 microsecond pulse at about a high pulse at about 3 volts, I believe. And so we can see here, maybe not. It's a bit hard. Let's turn some lights down a bit. See if we can see that pulse flashing in here. Let's zoom right in a little bit. Zoom in a bit. Can we see that pulse? Maybe not. Let's also get a radioactive source to increase the pulse count. I'll get a few of these and stack them up near the tube. Alright. Can we see here? And I'll try and darken the area with my hand a bit. Oh, this might be a challenge. There we go, we saw a pulse. Okay. So yeah, the pulse is happening, but it's happening between frames because it's so short. So in any case, that means I can drive an optocoupler. That'll be good. The next step is to get an optocoupler driving in input one of the I/O ports that I've left spare on the Raspberry Pi. Right, I've been working through this slowly because I'm struggling with some fatigue issues as a result, I believe, of MS and having a very overactive apprentice. Anyway, what's going on here? Well, we have 12 volts coming in here, we have an optocoupler, and we have our pulse output from the mighty ohm Geiger counter. Now, I'm using a 120 ohm resistor here, which at 3 volts pulls it to somewhere about 20 milliamps. And on the other side, I'm using a 390 ohm resistor, which pulls it to about 30 milliamps. So we should be good. Now, let's fire up our 12 volts. Okay, we haven't had a blow up. Let's fire up our Geiger counter here, which is sitting on top of some thorium bits and pieces, or some thoriated tungsten electrodes. But of course, they're not too radioactive through this unit yet. I haven't cut the holes for the tube. But we can see some pulses happening there. Actually, if I change this angle slightly, we might be able to see a little better. Alright, so opto isolation is working. So the idea now is that from the 12 volt side, we won't be running 12 volts from that. We'll be just connecting probably this resistor and the optocoupler through the GPIO of the Raspberry Pi. So this is my optocoupler board. I'm using a little AFTEL 8170 or an 817 style optocoupler. Good for about 60 milliamps. And I've done a little crude little prototype board here just in a real hurry. I'll have to scrape a bit of solder off some of them. But yes, this should work. And I've marked the polarity and the in and out side and everything like that to avoid confusion when it's in the board. So I'll have to note that on my documentation shortly. But yes, that's that done. Okay, so our optocoupler board is connected and installed with yet more hot glue, just because everybody seems to hate hot glue. And so do I, but it's prototype, one of a kind, whatever. There's an excuse. Insert appropriate excuse. Okay, so what we've done here, I have updated my diagram, and yes, I'm using Excel rather than the circuit schematic diagram program, just because I'm making so many changes as I go. This is a little easier for me, and I'll convert it to a schematic later. But at the moment, I can at least, with this, instead of a schematic, I can record the appropriate wire colors. And that's handy if I want to stick my head in there and see, say, where two colors change. And I've got the purpose and everything laid out. So at least I'm keeping track of this and I have a record. This is our optocoupler board we've just added in, and I've used brown and black wires for the whole process, which is good. Well, now I realize I've done brown and red, so alright, I'll have to change those colors, but easy to do, it's Excel, so good. I've got everything documented. The next step is going to be to try and do a little bit of programming, and I've got a fair idea how I'm going to do the program. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have the GPS write to a separate, its output to a separate file, and I'm going to have a script that writes the counts to a file as well, to a separate file. Then I'll have a third script that runs at a preset interval that will combine or merge all of that. However, there might be a more efficient way that I can do it in a single script. We'll come up with something. I've got to do a bit of thinking about that. This is purely only theoretical up until this point. Now it actually matters how I do it. So anyway, let's update my diagrams, and we'll see if we can at least get this to register a count. So we'll start playing with some software and SSH. Okay, so I've just spent a couple of hours on chat to a good mate of mine, and we had a good discussion over this code. As it turns out, I needed to declare that count was an integer. After that, everything works fine, and it's writing to a file, and it's putting the comma in there for the comma separated values. Everything works fine. I've got it in a bit of a verbose state at the moment, so it actually tells us what it's doing. But we can see here from the counts, it's counting up. It will write it to the file and reset the count. So every 5 seconds is just an arbitrary value I've chosen, but it's giving us a count for every 5-second period, and I can extrapolate that out to counts per minute. Alright, it's break time. Homemade sketty jaffles. Good stuff. Alright, it's like 10 o'clock at night, but it's actually working. It's registering counts per minute. We are sort of inside and in a bad spot for GPS, and it might drop out occasionally while we're looking at it, but it's logging nicely. It's doing very, very well. So I think very soon we might go for a walk with it and see what happens. Alright, well, I've transposed my data in Excel and I've hidden the Latin long columns for obvious reasons, but we have data in our counts per minute. It's looking very good. So hopefully we can get this into a GPS map like Google Earth fairly soon. Alright, so I'm down at the Armed Forces Museum to do a quick bit of testing, just the calibration here for comparison. Now we have a dial set that's not in ready access to the public, and I want to just get a rough comparison count. This is from about a foot away. This is mostly beta particles from this. So we're getting microsieverts per hour. I'll have to convert that to counts per minute when I get home. But we're a pretty steady 4.7 or thereabouts microsieverts per hour. Okay, so now hopefully this unit has fired up here and we're going to get a comparative count from the same distance here. I better turn the counter on. Wow, that's definitely counting up there. I can't even see the detected count from there. I need to get it to get a good average first. Alright, so what does it reckon the count was? About 2040 counts per minute as an estimate based on a 5-second sample. So it's fairly good. If I change the tube to it and go a bit closer. Alright, so from the counts per minute I would expect, I'd be from about this distance is the kind of level that I would expect to see. So that's the kind of level I'm looking for where I intend to scan. So actually it turns out I may have found the landowner for that area, and I might be able to get permission to go on there, which will be very nice. So right, so I reckon I'll have to convert microsieverts per hour to counts per minute. I'll find a calculator and we'll check that out. And my batteries are going a little flat at the moment. I can turn, actually what we'll do, we'll shut that component down. I'll leave the Geiger counter running. And you can see here the drawback behind it having only 3 LRFs. I'm pretty sure my apprentice has got something to do with the fact that I've only got 3 of those. Anyway, we can leave that running because that just runs off the 2 AA's in there. They're a little bit less power hungry. Alright, so let me do a quick bit of maths here. Alright, we can hear a bit of background noise here which sounds like some gunfire. That's a previous project I made some years ago. There's a light and sound show in here. Now I went back and I found a measuring stick, and I measured both of these from the exact same distance because my maths didn't work out. But it turns out to get counts per minute to microsieverts, you multiply your counts by minute or counts per minute by 0.0047. That meant 2047 counts per minute worked out to somewhere about 9.5 microsieverts an hour. When I measured from the same distance, this registered about 9.2 microsieverts per hour. So there's a fairly close correlation with that, and I think the voltage supply in this with the trim pot at the default position is about accurate. So we've got a little bit more work to do with the programming, but we're almost at business time. So yeah, we might have a bit of a wander around and see my other project, and we'll leave you with that before we go on to part 6. So we're just taking you for a quick tour around a small section of the army section of the museum. We have a ferret here, my favourite little child, we could almost say, and various other stuff. What we're going over here near the Bofors gun for is we want to see my little project that's hiding in under here. Now, I made this some years ago. There is a video from this on my other YouTube channel. I'll probably try and put a link in the description if I can to the build videos for that. But yeah, this gives you an idea of what's happening. Now, this system is linked to the cabinet lighting, and when a shell goes off, the lights will flicker. Usually on a dark, overcast day, it feels much more like you're hiding in a bunker. At certain times of the day, excuse me, at certain times of the day, this little vintage radio will be driven from it too. And it has a frame and a speaker and a little amplifier in here, and it plays wartime era 1920s type broadcasts. For the record, that is a Rakophone Pee-wee cabinet, produced in about the 1930s in Melbourne. It's a genuine cabinet. The knobs, of course, are 3D printed. So that's the end of that show. There's a radio here as well, which was removed from service more recently by myself during an upgrade of a military vehicle. And we have restoration room here, which is where I've been hiding out. And this is a Liberator nose turret. There's lots of interesting stuff out here. And yes, so entirely volunteer run this place. Very, very nice. And if you're interested in the electronic side of things, there is a Link trainer here as well, which is an early style flight simulator. And we have the driving computer for that as well, of which I am still learning about. And some of the trim settings under here as well. Everything's driven by valves on this and pneumatic system. We can see in here there's even transmit valves for the radio section as well in here, and very hard pneumatic tubes all through here. So just a few curiosities. Hopefully if you want to see more about this in my videos, please drop in a comment and I can focus on some specific areas for you guys. But in the meantime, this explains some of the inspiration as to why I'm doing this whole project, is to try and document some of the history out here. So yes, and this is a restoration in progress as well, so I can explain more about that if you guys are interested as well. But for now, I've got a little bit more calibration to do. I'm going to go home, and then I'm going to try and get some permission to go and do this initial scan. So we'll see part 6 coming very, very soon. I know these have been long videos, but this has been an epic build, as you probably noticed already. So I hope you guys are enjoying this, and I hope you enjoy a little bit of a departure from just the desk work. So yeah, we'll see you again fairly soon. See you later.